says it all. For 1 year and 3 months, I worked with a small band of fellow strays and desperate personalities who knew how to clean up and shut up. This was all in the distant past, north of a decade even. In all that time, I've never breathed a word of these stories to anyone. Not my wife, not my friends, not even my shrink. There was a time I prided myself on that, but now, I'm old in a way much different from age. My head hasn't sprouted so much as a single gray hair, and yet I've seen so much. I can't carry it forever. It's hard to say the time spent working with the bastards was pleasant. It wasn't often we'd come home without looking a little more tired than the previous day. That being said, the memories I have are warm and coated in nostalgia. Thinking back is sometimes like biting into warm bread fresh from the oven. If I remember more clearly, I feel that bread hit an exposed nerve and a rotten tooth. I don't think any of us were bad people. We all just needed money. It wasn't a job with a loyal staff. I was one of 5 workers who stayed longer than a year. The oldest was, well, we'll call him Lonnie. Lonnie started the company years before I joined, and you could see every year on him. He was a short, old man who spoke under a mountain of gravel and barely ever above a whisper. Despite his quiet and strained voice, he loved to talk. We'd hear story after story about completely elaborate and fabricated scenarios he made up on the spot. Why? Beats me. Probably thought it was funny. Lonnie, with enough motivation and time, could convince you that the sky was green and dogs walked on 2 legs. I once watched him completely convince a newbie that Spam came from an animal native to Hawaii who was being hunted to extinction due to overproduction of the food. Everything he said was buried under 5 layers of irony and 2 layers of sarcasm. The one thing he swore was true, put it on the grave of his mother, was that he met Quentin Tarantino and was the inspiration for the wolf in Pulp Fiction. Do I believe him? Fuck no. There were other regulars. Jackson, who was on someone's shit list and needed to make money fast. Sandra, who couldn't have been more than 19 when she started with Lonnie and was even younger when she saw her first body. And Frank. I see them all as clearly as the day I left them. Some of their faces make me smile, while some make vomit climb my throat. However, all of us, like it or not, are bonded by our shared story. That story started the day I lost my job. Before doing the shady side of the trade, I was a real crime scene cleaner. Worked with a very respected company for several years before my greed got the better of me. It's not a very interesting or poetic story. You're cleaning out a suicide and see a man's life savings under his mattress. More money than you'd make scrubbing up brains in a decade. I made a decision I think most people would. Where'd it get me? Across the desk from my boss, my contract sat between us like a thread keeping me from plummeting. I have no ill will for the guy. In all honesty, there wasn't much he could do given the position I put him in. He sat there for a while, turning the contract on his desk like a top. I don't remember the entire conversation, but I remember the first words we both said. I'm fired, right? Shit, you psychic. The conversation almost seemed scripted after that. Lots of nothing I can do's and we wish you the best in the futures. I knew all of this already and knew nothing I could say would change his mind. Did that stop me from begging? I think I was actually in tears as I asked him for anything to avoid unemployment. I was in a bad spot financially. We all were. He knew it, and whether out of pity or vengeance, he reached into his desk and handed me a card. Moretti Appliance Repair, followed by a phone number. My boss told me that was all he could do for me and ripped my contract in half. Later that same day, I had my first meeting with Alonzo Moretti. Did you know that pieces of the Ark of the Covenant still exist in the deserts between Egypt and Israel? Egypt's weird, huh? His face fell a bit. He seemed disappointed. After that, his tone became more serious. He said my previous boss spoke highly of me, but said I was a man of corruptible conscience. I moved to disagree, before Lonnie explained that was exactly why he agreed to meet me. He was going to ask me to do the same work I've been doing, but for 5 times the pay. All I had to do was keep my mouth shut and my eyes down while I worked. That's simple. Despite my track record, I wasn't a moron. I knew exactly what he was implying. He wanted me to clean up scenes before they became crime scenes. I asked him why he was being so upfront about all this. You've worked for the official boys for, let's see, 8 months. You know the trade, the techniques, the equipment. Hell, half the new guys will believe pasta soaks up blood better than a sponge. You're already a godsend in that department. Plus, I saw it in you. You are, in fact, a man of corruptible conscience. I could reach into my jacket, toss you a stack of bills, and you'd never breathe a word of this to anyone ever. That I'd put on my mother's grave. I didn't argue. I started the next day. My first day, like almost every day, started early. A group of 7 guys packed into 2 vans before the birds had even begun to sing the sun's rise. We stopped at a nearby laundry service to buy cleaning supplies secondhand. We never bought directly from stores, as an appliance repair company. Buying so many chemicals would raise a few eyebrows if anyone were to look into the business. As for the laundry owners, we paid double, and they didn't ask questions. As the small town's aging buildings gave way to seas of trees, I got to know the guys I was riding with. Lonnie rode shotgun. He insisted that I and another newbie listen to his protocol before we got there. The driver was Sandra, whom I never heard speak until 2 months on the job. The other newbie was at my side, and behind me was Jackson, who also kept to himself, but to a less religious degree than Sandra. The atmosphere in that van was gray. The scenery outside was covered in a silver film from the half-frozen dew on the grass, and the fog that sought refuge in the lower valleys. Sometimes, when I wake up early enough to watch the sunrise, I feel like I'm back in that van, hearing Lonnie give me the crash course in body vanishing. Our process required one thing of the client. They had to have a large appliance in the house that they wanted cleaned. Think a refrigerator, washing machine, oven, dishwasher. Anything vaguely human-sized. Lonnie and his crew would come in and clean the place. The package, as he called them, would be stuffed into the appliance, along with any waste produced while cleaning. The appliance was then transferred to the van, where we'd then drive to Lonnie's workshed at the edge of town to properly dispose of the remains using a makeshift crematory. The ashes and bone fragments would then be scattered in Lonnie's pond with fish food to erase all evidence. A week later, after the appliance had been properly cleaned, Lonnie would take it back to the client, which marked the end of the job. This system, throughout the entire time I worked with Lonnie, only failed twice, and not due to him at all. In many ways, the man was a genius, but others likely consider him a maniac. I think he's just like any other blue-collar worker. My first day was a 2-for-1. Lonnie told me we'd be doing jobs at our most loyal customer's home, and a brand new client who ordered a rush job. The rush job was scheduled later in the day, so we were hitting other first. I remember hearing Jackson squirm behind me when we arrived at the property. We were greeted at the front gate by a large, jolly man who could have been mistaken for Santa Claus if he had worn the right color. We'll refer to him as Santa, and first impressions proved him to be an extremely likable individual. I caught myself laughing at a few of his jokes as he shook hands and told Lonnie a few fishing stories. plus the plastic sheets covering the walls and floor, was the sign of courtesy that regulars to Lonnie's business often showed, a courtesy juxtaposed by the grisly scene. Our package was naked and tied to a rickety wooden chair. There were very few parts of him that retained his skin tone. The large majority of his body was marred by purple and red. That, and the small bit of white visible from his exposed cranium. I could tell just by looking at the man that his death was as long as it was brutal. Protruding ribs and a shrunken face suggested malnourishment. He had been kept here a long while. In that time, it seemed each of his nerves became acutely familiar with pain in all its forms. The killing blow rested on his left temple, where the concave skull had caused one eye to pop while the other bulged unnaturally. The other newbie at my side puked and ran out the door. Lonnie just laughed. It's amazing how many people lie on their resumes. Frank, get him a beer and talk him through it. The skinny, balding man in the corner nodded. His youthful face took one final look at the body before silently walking away. Santa hovered over us as we wondered at his work. He leaned over Jackson's shoulder and whispered, "I hope you're saving every penny he pays you. Would hate to ruin Lonnie and I's camaraderie." Jackson didn't respond, just started cleaning. I did the same. The job was easy enough, thanks to Santa's preparations. In less than 30 minutes, we had the fridge dollied to the van as Santa stacked hundreds into Lonnie's palm. I didn't see the other newbie when I left, only Frank. I didn't question it. The ride back was much more uncomfortable. I had switched vans with another worker who had started a little before me. This put me alone with Frank and a fridge holding our package. The air was tense, even worse than the funeral-like silence of the other van. The silence in this one was heavier somehow. The quiet was only ever interrupted when we hit a bump, and the resulting heavy thud inside the fridge betrayed its contents. At least the other van had Lonnie there to shoot the shit and drop tips. Frank, though. Frank was different. He was silent, but he didn't ignore you. Even with his eyes on the road, you felt watched, like I was giggling in church. So I, in my infinite wisdom, decided to talk to the man. Don't ask me why. I never did. When my voice came, it cracked on the first syllable. That guy back there. He does that a lot. I remember he smiled. If it was at my statement or my shaken state, I still don't know. Everyone has their thing. His voice was smoother than I expected, the kind of cadence you'd hear in a courtroom. Somehow, in that single sentence, I recognized an education in his past. Why? Not our job to ask why. We're hired to keep the dead quiet. People said 100 years ago that dead men tell no tales. In our day and age, that's becoming a crock of shit. You put any dead man in front of modern-day labs and cops, and they will tell stories like you wouldn't believe. Dead men speak through the living. Last thing we should ever do is talk about them or our clients. No more words were exchanged. We stopped at Lonnie's workshed to drop off the package. From here, the group split. Lonnie and I took the van to the next job, while the others covered disposal for the Santa job. I drove as the memory of Frank's cathedral-like car faded to Lonnie's cheerful tail weaving. He explained there'd be days we were stretched thin, and I'd be forced to solo a job. He wanted me to be ready for it now, so I wasn't blindsided in the future. This led us to discuss his history with the company and the interesting jobs he'd seen. Something he mentioned caught my attention. Yeah, shit. If Frank hadn't helped me through it, I'd have been in prison before you were in diapers. Frank, I thought you started the company. I did, but Frank... He lit a cigarette as he thought for a moment. Hell, he's been doing this since 97. Or was it 87? Hell if I know. Man's got a history. The conversation died as we arrived at the job site. The dingy motel was at its most quiet. This scene was different from the last. A double package with only one dishwasher to make it fit. Lonnie sat in the car while the client walked me to the room and opened the door. I tasted pennies before even seeing the room. Blood covered the sheets and soaked the carpets surrounding the two packages, who were still locked in a tight embrace. His hands around her throat and the skin of his throat under her nails. Bitch always panicked, was more trouble than she earned. The client said, "You got 2 hours till this place is popping again. Cops sometimes snoop around then." I nodded, and he left me to the job. My original plan was to move both packages to the tiled bathroom to limit the blood that leaked into the carpet. I say original because as I tried to lift the John, the blood made his body slip and fall back onto the woman, who grunted in pain. I stopped in my tracks, looked down at the woman again. She wasn't moving, a glassy look in her eye. I leaned closer, never looking away. After a minute, she finally blinked. I gasped and jumped back, which made her rise in turn and lift her arms in protest. "You're fucking alive." She shushed me and looked at the door. After a few seconds, she turned back and whispered, "He'll kill me. You have to get me out of here." My eyes shifted to the dead John behind her. She read my expression. He would have killed me. I didn't have a choice. "Please, you have to get me out of here." I hesitated, then decided. The cleanup took significantly longer than Santa's. The lack of preparations and carpeted floor made cleaning a headache. Luckily, the client had provided a few rolls of the matching material, meaning I could cut out the stained flooring and replace it. The dishwasher was loaded into the van at the hour and 20 mark just as the motel's female workforce began roaming. The client watched while counting out the cash. Impressive as hell. "I'll call you back if need be." I just nodded. "Oh, and that dishwasher is really broken. Do you actually do repair or..." "Yeah, for an additional fee." The client smiled and added a few more bills. Commerce. Lonnie was oddly quiet on the drive back. Fine by me, because I had no idea how to not sound suspicious about the very much alive prostitute in the dishwasher. I went 20 over the speed limit, trying to get to the shed as fast as possible. When I arrived, the sun was setting on the horizon. I told Lonnie I could handle the disposal myself and moved the dishwasher into the work shed. The smell of that place was unlike anything I can describe. Burning hair mixed with burst stomachs and charred meat. I can still smell it when I grill steak. Still, it was probably a hell of a lot better for the girl when I opened the dishwasher and let her crawl free. Sorry about having to be in there with, That's fine. It was better than when he was breathing. We talked a bit as I loaded the waste into the furnace. It was a story not unique to her, but one I don't wish to repeat. She chose to tell me. I can't choose to tell you on her behalf. All you need to know is that she had nowhere to go. I did what anyone would. I was paid for 2 bodies, but only destroyed 1. She deserved the right to her price point, so I gave her the money and told her to wait before leaving. My last words to her were, "See you around. No offense, but given your line of work, I hope that's not true." I left her in the shed and joined Lonnie at the pier, where he was tossing dust into the pond. I nodded to him. He nodded back. "You finish up?" "Yeah." "What'd you do about the girl?" I froze solid, causing him to laugh. "Walls of that shed are paper thin. I heard you talking with her. Gave you 2 some privacy. What did you do with her?" Weight lifted off my shoulders as I realized Lonnie didn't care. Gave her some cash. Told her to start over. The right thing. Not what I would have done, but the right thing. Silence passed over us for a few moments. Lonnie said as he scratched the back of his head. "When I started this line of work, I saw the person on every job site. It was hard not to feel bad when scrubbing up the brains of bad luck parents. each and every one. It started small. I saw the more mangled corpses as a long workday. I saw the freshies with voided bowls as a nuisance. This job took and took till I started to see new loudmouths on the street as future packages. Kid, we're all just meat. Sometimes I'm so terrified of how I've changed that I think it'll scare me straight, make me get a real job. But it doesn't matter if I'm here or at McDonald's or in a fucking classroom. I'll still be in the meat business. He dumped the rest of his bucket into the pond. This just pays more.